Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
I guess a reliable one is if someone is shaking with their hands while they're betting. It's an indicative sign of strength because they're releasing tension through the motion of betting because they have a lot of strength. Or if they're staring directly at you when they make a big bet, it's a sign of weakness because they're feigning strength, but they're actually weak. So there's these classical tells.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, where we focus on human connection and what brings us together. I'm Moshe Popack, and I just had a fantastic chat with competitive poker player and coach Alec Torelli. He shared what poker teaches us about life and how you can use those skills to be more successful personally and professionally. Before we play that conversation, a quick reminder that if you like this show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at mpopack. And here's a 5-star review we received from a listener named Joe. Quote, "This is a great podcast. I've listened to hundreds over the years and can say the host Moshe does a great job interviewing his guests. Good luck on your journey discovering your true self." Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate the kind words. Now, here's my conversation with Alec. Enjoy. Thank you, Alec, for joining Common Denominator. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And your team did a great job as well. So kudos to them for onboarding me and making the process seamless. So it's been great so far. Thank you
so much. So I think of each guest, I always think about the common denominator in poker, because I play, I enjoy it, for fun. I know for me, when I reflect on myself, there's so many different emotions that happen in a typical poker game that also apply to real life. Do you take the training, and what does that training look like? Do you take that emotional training and do you use it through other parts of your life?
Absolutely. Poker is a great training for life in general. And when one has dedicated their life to the game, like I have for a large part of my life, it just becomes so ingrained in the way that you think and see the world and make decisions. And a lot of it with respect to so that's a broad level answer, but then with respect to the emotional component, in order to win at the game at a high level or even a moderate level, you have to develop some capacity to have emotional mastery of some kind, because you're always met with this adversarial feedback when you lose a pot, you make a mistake, you play a hand badly, or even the hardest thing to deal with is you play the hand perfectly. Like you wait all night for the perfect moment, the perfect trap. You get the VIP, you get the bad player, you get him to do exactly what you wanted by, the way you bet the cards, you get all your money in, and then boom, a card comes and you lose the pot. So your expectation is here to win because you feel entitled to that pot. You did everything correct in your power. And in the real, the real world in life, it gives you a pretty good feedback loop for when you do something, you get the result you want, right? You're in real estate, you set up a deal, you make the deal happen, you find the right property, the property manager, the pieces, the investors, you invest in that deal, the deal makes money, like a high percentage of the time, almost always. I mean, sure, there's black swans, but you almost always get the results you want. You play chess, you move your pieces well, you win. You take a test, you score, you make great decisions, you score highly, you get a good grade. Poker's not like that. So in order to combat that, to be able to calm your, sympathetic nervous system while you're playing in real time, to deal with that adverse feedback, you have to have a level of emotional mastery. And so when you can accept a reality that you don't want, that you don't even feel like, frankly, you deserve, right? You get all your money in with the best hand. You're 90% to win the pot. You made the best decision. You kind of deserve to win that pot, right? At least 90% of the time. But luck happens. That doesn't always happen. So to be able to calm yourself and focus and make good decisions, even when that happens, and then play the next hand, literally 10 seconds later, play the next hand at the highest level of your capacity, you have to have emotional mastery. So when you can do that day in and day out at the poker table, 10 12 hours a day, all the time, when life comes at you and a challenging situation comes at you and you get unlucky in life or you deal with adversity, you're just used to processing that in a logical, calm, rational way and looking at what you can control and focusing on the quality of your decisions and not really worrying about placing blame or being a victim or worrying about your bad luck. You just focus on the good and the optimistic and what you can control to make the situation better.
I love that you said, for so many years as a young child, I always thought about you talking about the emotional mastery, and always think about like the samurai. In order to join the samurai, right? It's not that you don't have emotions. People might look at you and say, what, this guy has no emotions? No, you have all the emotions. You're seeing everything. It's just that the outside world is not seeing that.
Exactly.
They're not, you see it, and you're very self-aware, extremely self-aware. They're just, right.
My mentor told me, like, someone I worked with, he told me, people don't know how you feel. They just know how they would feel based on how you're expressing yourself if they were in the same situation as you. So If you see someone at a poker table and they're totally calm after losing a big pot, you might think that they're unfazed. And inside, they might be fuming, they might be burning, but they have that emotional mastery to be able to calm themselves and only express outward, because what you express outward, the other people use to their advantage. When they see you losing, they start to play better, right? They start to feed off your weakness, right? So what you convey is super important. So that level of control is a huge component of the game. And if your emotions and your body and your expression is in control of your mind, you're out of control. If your mind's in control of your body, you're in control. So like being able to, have that level, that cerebral level of being able to calm yourself down, what you can do that through yoga, through meditation, through practice, through poker. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that in the world, but that's a super important quality for life, I think.
What would you say for you in your personal journey? I just like to give kind of the audience, what's like your top one or two things that you do to because it's a constant work, that mastery of emotion that you do to master your own emotions. What's like something that you do?
Well, I think the first framework to step slightly back from that, but it's related, is to always be measuring your progress against your former self and never compare yourself to other people. Because there's always, if you get to a point in poker or in your career where you might be better than the competition, and that's when you can plateau and stop improving, and then ego gets in the way, and then you lack what got you to that point in the first place. And so I think always trying to realize that perfection is never attained, and it's the process, being in love with the process of getting a little bit better every day, that keeps you where you are if you've reached the top, or gets you to the top and to achieve your goals if you're striving for that. And so looking at it from that lens, realizing that no matter where you are, no matter how good you are, even when you're winning, there's always something you can do to be better than your former self. So competing against yourself is the first framework, I think. And then when it comes tactically to the emotional side, I think that poker is a great vehicle for that, because if you can learn to, poker's a training. If you look at poker at a high level, poker's just the vehicle to develop the skill sets that are needed to challenge you to be your best self. And if you frankly don't change the way that you approach the world, the way you make decisions, the way that you approach life, you're going to lose at poker. So it's this constant feedback that's requiring you to mold and change and conform and get better. Otherwise, you're going to lose. So if you can't master yourself, your money, the way the way you make decisions and master the game, you're going to lose. So poker's a great training. And if you look at it like a training, I feel like one can develop a lot from the game. But outside of poker, when I'm not playing the game, to be better when I am playing the game, studying is a good part of it. But then in the emotional mastery side, I think meditation is a great part of it. And I think working out is a great part of it. And so meditation allows you to detach from ego, and detach from self, and detach from, what you're feeling in that moment, and to understand that, you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings. And if you have a feeling, it's kind of like a wave, right? So you can be standing on the beach and see a wave coming, but you don't have to get sucked into the tide and just completely, collapse under the water. And so be able to separate from the emotions you're feeling while you're experiencing them, like saying, okay, I feel angry. I feel upset that I lost. I feel entitled to win this pot, but this is just an emotion. This emotion will pass, and I'm going to not, give energy to that thought, and I'm going to change the way I think, my relationship with that thought, and observe the thought, is a huge, huge tool in poker.
And I love that. I always try to, I saw that movie with Tom Hanks, Castaway, when it's like you become like, you talk about that like conscious observer, right? So you make yourself, you create your own reality in a way through that mastery. And I also like the idea of zero expectations. You could do everything right in life if you have a base of expectation of everyone outside of yourself, zero, which is super hard, right? Because you've worked in it 10 years, 15, whatever you've done, right? And you expect zero. The level of gratitude shoots through the moon, right?
Right.
Anything that you get from anybody else, you're living in that sense of thank you.
Right, because everything is a win when your expectation is zero.
I had this conversation the other day with my 14-year-old son. Exactly that.
Brilliant.
And but it's a work. It's a work because society tells you the other way, right?
And it's a work because you're always, people always compare themselves to their immediate reality. And in one's immediate reality, they only see things that are on par. And we have the tendency to notice things that are better than ours, that we want, that we lack. That's kind of like a human nature. And so if you live in a nice, you live in a city, everyone around you in that city's, pretty much, at your level or whatever. But if you zoom out a little bit, half the world, and this is something I talk about in my keynotes, like half the world lives on $250 or $350, whatever, a couple dollars a day or less. Right. And so we don't have any control over the reality that we're born into. Like we could have easily been born into the reality where we're, we have no electricity, no running water. And I've been to these places in Cambodia. Like I've lived a lot in Asia. And so I've been to these places where there's a teenager there and, your 14-year-old could have been born there. I could have been born there. You could have been born there. And then your reality is kind of that, right? It's hard to graduate, move up from that reality to living in a modern life in the first world, having, that $1,000 cell phone and shooting podcasts, right? So like a lot of it is the hand you're dealt. And so being dealt a winning hand is kind of the reality that we've all been born into. If you're listening to this podcast, talking about real estate and investing, you're probably dealt a winning hand in life, better than average, right? So that's something to be eternally grateful for. That's just the hand you're dealt. And then, the way I think about it and the latter half of the focus is like, how do you play that winning hand? And so you've been dealt a winning hand. And then what are the quality of the decisions that you're going to make that allow you to play that hand well? So I think that's a huge importance for gratitude. And then also just focusing on what you can control and not worrying about, the lack and the things you don't have and the bad things that happen to you. Because at the grand scheme of things, if you zoom out, they're pretty inconsequential.
When it comes to learning, do you find you learn more from winning a hand or losing a hand?
Absolutely 100% losing. And I think that's representative of probably 99% of people because you have this confirmation bias, right? So humans are hardwired to be, to believe that the feedback they're getting is reflective of the inputs they're putting out, right? And we're taught this from school. You make good decisions, you score highly on a test. You move your pieces well, you win in chess. Like most things in life that you're taught, right? Especially from a young age, like study and you'll get a good grade. Like there's a direct correlation between the input and the output. So we're taught this. So we're not used to thinking that when we win, we could have done something wrong. That's not something that people are taught. But in poker, it's very true that you could play the hand absolutely terribly and win because there's luck, but you could also play the hand perfectly and lose. And this is not something that people are used to. So when people lose, they tend to look at things more of what they did wrong because that's the feedback that they got. They're like, okay, well, I lost. That was unpleasant. As Freud says, you run towards pleasure, you run from pain. So when they lose, they're running from the pain. How do I not get more of this thing? And that's a bigger driver. Running from pain is a bigger driver than running towards pleasure. So it's like, I don't want any of this in my life. Let me figure out what I can do to not have that. And that's when they come to study poker, or they join conscious poker, they learn poker training, they start to work on their game or whatever. And so I suffer from that as well. But I think the difference is that pros look at what they did wrong when they're winning and how they could have won more, not because they're greedy, but because they're optimizing for the quality of their decisions. But when you lose, it's like a forced time to step back and reflect that, there's probably a correlation between losing and playing poorly if it's over a long enough sample. And so you're kind of forced to either, have a huge ego and live in denial, or accept reality and say, okay, I'm not getting the results I want. It's time to change the quality of the decisions that I'm making.
If you're just tuning in, this is the Common Denominator podcast. My guest this week is competitive poker player and coach Alec Torelli. Next week, I'll be speaking with entrepreneur and business owner Kerry Siggins, who last year was named a top influential CEO of 2021. We'll chat about why she thinks it is so important to build an employee-centric culture at your company. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, back to the show. I think about also like these super long games and the stamina that it requires. Just in general, what was the longest game you've ever played?
I mean, when I was just dropped out of college, I was 18. I played from Thursday night to Sunday morning. I played like 68 hours in one session. I didn't do that often. I mean, this like one time, but I regularly played 24-hour sessions in Macau when I was living there in the high stakes games. And what happened was, I would get up. I'm an early riser normally, but when I'm on a poker schedule, you have to be a late riser because the games start at a later time. People don't want to play poker at 10 a.m. They play after dinner. They play when they're, they go after the party or whatever. So games start late at night after people have done what they do for the day, because the VIPs, the people that you want to play against, are playing recreationally. So they want to play at night. So I would get up in the morning, like 10 a.m., but these games would start at 10 p.m. And they were in, Macau and China. And so the nature of the game was that, these guys loved poker and they wanted to play. And there's a big cultural thing about, saving face and pride and wanting to win. And they're highly, highly competitive. And so when they're losing, they would want to stay for very long periods of time and they would want to play. So these games lasted 24 hours. And it was also to the point where, like, the pros are the kind of like the house. The house always needs to provide a service to the other people that want to play. So if they're losing to you and you quit the game, you're never going to get invited back. So you need to stay there until the game ends, until they decide to quit, to give them the opportunity. So there's this saving face element where you can't really quit because it would be like dishonorable. But then there's also, they have this cultural hierarchy thing too, where it's like you're there to serve the boss. They're the Laoban, as it's called. So we would play these 24-hour games. So I'd be up for 36 hours. And that's why I mentioned before the working out component, because working out is a physical activity that's dominated by the mind. It's the mind overriding what the body does not want to do. So if you could override what you're feeling inside, right? If you can separate yourself from the emotion of, when you're deadlifting or sprinting at the top of your capacity, that you're feeling very unpleasant, but you can calm that nervous system to say, okay, I'm feeling unpleasant, but I'm going to push through this because I'm training my mind to be stronger than my body. I'm training my mind to get a little bit better. You could push through those things. So I mean, obviously a lot of it went into that. I was feeling like I would dedicate my life to being a performance athlete, and my diet, my nutrition, my caffeine intake, my sleep, my meditation, my exercise, everything went into competing at the highest levels for 24 hours at a time.
Are you doing those 24 hours? Because I know I was speaking to a golf pro the other day, and he was saying when you step, it's a typical game, it's say 4 hours, 20 minutes. You step up to the ball, practice swing, you have your system, it's 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds.
Exactly.
And then your brain kind of shuts off. Do you have, during that 24-hour period, is there brain on, brain off periods, or is it you're just on? Because you got to watch, right? You're watching, I assume, right? You're
absolutely
watching, right?
Well, poker's a little different. Poker's a lot like golf. Let's start with where they're similar. Poker's a lot like golf in that the game is very long, but the impact of the result of the game is very short. So in golf, it's a 4-hour game, but how often are you swinging? If you combine those 20 seconds, you're swinging for like 3 minutes. So golf is a game that's 4 hours that happens in 3 minutes. And poker's the same way. Most hands you have to fold. You only play, let's say, 15% of your hands. So you might play 3 hands an hour. So poker's an hour long. And for every hour, you're playing 3 hands. So you might make 5 minutes of decisions in an hour. So it's the same in that way. But the difference between poker and golf is that what happens in golf outside of your swing is not contingent on the next swing. Like what your opponent does and what he does, what he swings, and if he misses or hits a hole in one or takes, a par 7 or whatever, like it doesn't matter, because like you're going to play your game the next way regardless. You're going to do the same thing. Poker's not that way, because every decision that your opponents make changes your next decision, because poker's a game of people played with cards. It's not a game of cards played with people. Right. So what the people do matters more for your strategy than what the cards are doing. So you have to be watching every hand you're not playing to gather that information. Let's call it free information, because you're getting information, not risking any money because you're not in the hand. And then you're compiling that information, you're aggregating that information to update your strategy for the next hand. Right. So the best players are going to update their information better than the worst players. And your edge happens when you're not playing to prepare for when you are playing. So positioning yourself in the right situation and updating your strategy for what you're going to do. Because as Seneca says, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So if you're not preparing yourself in those 55 minutes that you're not making decisions, you're not going to have the maximum opportunity in the 1 or 2 minutes where you are making those decisions. So poker, look, in 24 hours, I'm not going to pretend like I'm, perfect Buddha in present zone focus for 24 hours. I have times where I think about problems. I think about, I zone out. I have times where I, go to do jump squats and push-ups to stay alert. So you obviously have times where you're zoning out, but you're training yourself to the maximum ability of your capacity to stay in flow and focus for as many hours of those 24 as you can, because that's your edge.
Wow. I see that's a tremendous work. And it, you talk about the physical exercise being a tremendous part of that too, right? You gotta be super on point. What would you say? I think
most people would think poker players are, like lazy and fat and unhealthy and like all these things, but like at the highest levels, like, I'm not even that strong, but I'm deadlifting like 225 or could sprint or, swim a mile. Like I'm not an athlete, but I'm a poker player, but like I'm training myself at a high level and I'm not even, so there's plenty of people in better shape than me. But you have that clean diet, like optimized biohacking sort of nature in poker players all the time.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's eye-opening. I obviously, exactly, to the layperson, they would not think that, right? You have this like this vision of like a smoke-filled room, people sitting there, they got the cap and the sunglasses and just drinking drinks and eating wings and whatever. But
right. You see that in go to the Bellagio, you play 2-5 in a game where someone's there for the weekend to have a beer and watch sports and have fun. They're doing that. But you move up in levels when, instead of playing for $500, people are playing for 50,000 or 500,000, they're behaving differently. Yeah. It's a different game.
What would you say, your favorite game that you've been a part of, through your journey? What would you say is number one in your mind?
The high stakes Macau cash games, just because I was there with my wife at a different culture and we were living abroad. We were traveling all around. The lifestyle component that came with it, our visas only lasted a month. So we had to leave. So we were forced to leave the country every month in order to stay there. So we're forced to leave. We're in Macau. There's a direct flight to Bali for like $100. So like, we got married in Bali consequentially, but like we would do all these other lifestyle component things. But then the game itself, was the gaming revenue in Macau. This is a proxy for the poker scene. The gaming revenue in Macau when we were there was 7 times bigger than Las Vegas. People think, oh, I want to go to the Bellagio. There's good action or whatever. The gaming revenue in Macau is 7 times bigger than Vegas. And so, the Venetian is hugely bigger. And so there's, the most amount of VIPs and wealth and opportunity was there. And so just the sheer magnitude of the games, it really felt like being in the Olympics, because you'd have these expats that would come from all over the world, right? So poker's a niche market. So if you're playing, imagine playing, basketball at a state level, right? If you're a good player, you play against other teams. If you move in your city, then you move up, you play against other players in your state. And then if you're really good, you go play against other players in the NBA in your country. And then if you're great, you go to the Olympics. So Macau had this unique phenomenon where like all the best players in their individual, countries, like, Sweden or Norway or the UK or Australia or the US or Germany, whatever, they would all then fly to Macau to play. So we would have this group of maybe 50 of us, maybe 70 of us that would play the high stakes games there, maybe 50. And they would be from all over the world. So I met people from all over the world because they would be like the best players from Norway that would fly in, the best players from Australia that would fly in. So I had friends from all over the world that we were all there only for poker. So it's like we had no choice but to be friends, and we would compete against each other too. So it was like the best players in the world were all there competing, but then the biggest VIPs in the world were all there as well that were, fueling the action of the game. So it was just this incredible dynamic that really I don't think could be replicated.
That sounds super, super cool. What was the most you've ever won in a game?
I know everyone loves to ask that question, but I really don't like to answer it because I don't like to talk too much about personal finance. But the games were very big. Like we had games where, you're buying in 100K or $250,000, $500,000, big games like that, where like, the size of what you would sit down with just to enter was 6 figures and more. So, yeah, the games add up. I think people think, a lot of the money is in tournaments, right? Because you see people buy in 10,000 and they win $1 million in a tournament. Obviously, that only happens to one person. Most people that buy in 10,000 lose. 80% of the people that buy in a tournament lose, and then most people that cash, they buy in 10,000, they make 15. You don't hear about those people. You only see it on TV. The one guy that won $1 million or 10 million, or whatever. But like on average, for stability and for like daily, if you measure like hourly rate and stuff like that, and like win rates and just like opportunity, I think there's a lot more in the big cash game scene.
And that would make sense. I always think about, all these people, sometimes they're wearing sunglasses, sometimes they have different caps and different things that they're wearing, and the music. How do you, just like a tip, a general idea, how would you go about reading a potential opponent? What are some of the top things that you look for when you're trying to size up an opponent?
Good question. I don't think there's certain hyper specific things that are like they're called tells. And they basically mean if someone takes a certain action in a certain way, it's indicative of their hand strength. There's books on tells, there's courses on tells. You can kind of look it up. It's a little bit reduced in terms of a framework, because it's basically like saying, there's a famous example in Rounders, which is, great, widely considered the greatest poker movie, where the villain in the movie is like, breaking apart his Oreo and he's eating his Oreo. And that's a tell that he has a very strong hand. So it's like this super dramatized thing where I remember one time I was playing in a big game as well. And I took a bite of my food. I was eating broccoli and I took a bite, and the guy said, well, the way you ate your broccoli, I thought you were bluffing. And he called me, and I wasn't bluffing. But like these sorts of dramatic sort of things that everyone is looking for, these superficial kind of hacks. And there are some things like that. I guess a reliable one is if someone like is shaking with their hands while they're betting. It's an indicative sign of strength, because they're releasing tension through the motion of betting because they have like a lot of strength. Or if they're staring directly at you when they make a big bet, it's a sign of weakness because they're feigning strength, but they're actually weak. So there's these classical tells that exist. But I think a better framework for thinking about it is just the relationship between the way someone makes decisions at the table and how to kind of navigate the two sorts of ways that one makes decisions. So there's intuitive decisions, and then there's logical decisions. There's emotional decisions too. Like if you're tilting and you're stuck and you're losing and your ego's getting in the way and you're pissed off, those are emotional decisions. Never make those. Work on your exercise, your meditation, yoga, whatever it is, to avoid making emotional decisions. Those are clearly always bad. But in terms of good quality decisions, there's intuitive decisions and logical decisions. So the first thing that happens at the table also happens in life. You meet someone for the first time. Most of you don't know me. You're hearing my voice. You either think you really like me, there's something about me that's really captivating and interesting, or I'm a giant douchebag and I'm an asshole and you don't like me. Like that's pretty intuitive, right? If you're seeing me on this video, you get a feel for who I am and my vibe. Is it my white shirt or my little jaded necklace that is for prosperity? No, it's just the way that I come across, right? My mannerisms, my aura, myself, right? This is your intuition that's sort of quantifying all this intangibles and putting them into like this equation in your mind that's telling you yes or no, right? So that also happens at the poker table. You get a read, as it's called, about someone, the way they move. Is it the way that they moved their chips, or the way I ate my broccoli, or the way they moved their Oreos? No, it's just everything that happened that your subconscious, your energy, your essence is quantifying, that's telling you strong or weak. He's bullshitting me, he's bluffing, or he's value betting. He has a really strong hand. He has a monster. It's not one thing, it's everything. That's the first part of the decision-making process. The second part is that now that you have information, you have an input, you have something that's, you're listening to, you could then use your logical mind, your rationality, your conscious mind to sort of quantify the facts. So that's when you replay the hand in your mind. You start with pre-flop. I have a system for this in conscious poker. It's called a hand range funnel, where you basically go through the hand street by street. You start with pre-flop, you go to the flop, you go to the turn, you go to the river. You sort of quantify every bet and decision they made, and you start to dynamically like think about all the types of hands they could have. So then you use your analytical mind to back up what your intuition thinks is true or not true. And then when those two things align, when you feel like the guy's bluffing you, and then you go through the math, you go through the logical side, and you say, wait a minute, his betting patterns don't make sense. He's probably bluffing. You have a perfect match, and you're likely to make a good quality decision. Right, so that's sort of the relationship. And I think that works in life too, right? Like you meet someone from the opposite sex, you're attracted to them. Is it the color of their shirt or their shoes or their eyes? No, it's just, you're just sexually attracted to them. That's just how it works. Then you get to know them and you see if, your read of the person was right. Are they crazy or are they cool? Right. Like, I mean,
so if someone has a good hand, there's a logic to how they bet.
Absolutely. 100%. Yes.
Right.
Unless the person is
interesting.
I say 100% and then I say unless. So yes, there's a logic to it. There's always a way to use deductive reasoning to analyze their bet patterns to come to a likely conclusion of the types of hands they have. So it's a game of probabilities, right? So you're not always going to be right. That's the game of playing a game of imperfect information, which is poker. You don't have all complete information like you do in chess. You have perfect information. So you could always make the right move. In poker, you don't have all of that, but you can use probability to say, wait a minute, they bet, they raised, they went all in, they probably have a strong hand, And so you're always doing that in every hand you play. It's harder to do, ironically, against worse players because they don't have necessarily a game theoretic or a rational betting pattern. They might just not understand strategy and they just go all in with any two cards. And it's harder to kind of use deductive reasoning. But the better someone is, the more complex their game is. So it's harder to play against better players. But the more you can use deductive reasoning to kind of analyze, it doesn't make sense for them to bet like this with this hand. They would never do that because I know my player. Therefore, they can't have this type of hand. So they must be bluffing or they must be value betting.
I'm going to ask you, I know besides this whole world, I know you invest in, obviously, in mobile homes and in crypto.
Yes.
So two quick questions. I mean, my main business, I'm in multifamily. I have office buildings. And recently, I've been getting into mobile home parks.
No way.
Yeah. So what's your thinking about mobile homes and why do you like that as an investment?
So, I mean, first of all, I'm, most of my things are asymmetric, right? So I'm in poker, high risk environment. I'm in obviously in crypto. I have a Substack and a YouTube about crypto. I'm in VC, right? So these are things where you risk a little and you win a lot. It's like a high payoff, high risk reward type of thing, kind of like tournament poker. So mobile homes provide complete diversity in investments to most things that people are invested in. People are in stocks, kind of the same thing. It's completely uncorrelated. And I think mobile homes as a category of real estate are also decorrelated to macro policy. People always need a place to live, and the mobile home park niche is such that people are not going to be downgrading. If you're in a market where real estate goes up a lot, and that could go down a lot because what goes up can come down, and so there's a lot of volatility in macro conditions where the Fed interest rates and stuff like that. So you're kind of playing the game that all these other assets are correlated to, the real estate market's correlated to the Fed. It's a lagging indicator of risk on assets, right? When people speculate long on low interest rates, but mobile home parks is kind of sheltered from that to some extent. It's less correlated. I mean, one other thing is, in the latest deal we're doing, the depreciation is amazing. So this multifamily depreciates over 27-year schedule. So that's 3% a year. Mobile home parks depreciate over 17 years. So your depreciation is higher. So that shelters a lot of income. The average, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these statistics, obviously, better than me.
I'm with you.
The average tenant in multifamily, or they move every 18 months. Mobile home parks, they own their own parks. They move every 8 years. So you have less managerial rake, as we call it in poker. Rake is money that comes out of the pot that's given away to someone else. It's kind of like that. There's less involvement. And because of that, they own their own parks. They take better care of them. There could be less expenses. And it's great. I mean, they're a depreciating asset too. Nobody's building them. There's no competition because no cities want mobile home parks. They tear them down and build, storage or commercial or shopping centers or parking lots. And so there's just not a lot of competition. We have the only park in our city in our latest deal, right? So, it's just great.
So I want to just tell you. So when I got into real estate, that's exactly the way I was thinking as far as but mainly workforce housing. Not necessarily. I'm in Miami, right? So it's the lowest of the stable. Everybody needs a place to live, and government needs to support that. And and with mobile home parks, that's the same logic now because everything is so volatile now. Because even
especially in today's world,
yes, and not everybody, not even with workforce housing, people can't afford $2,000 for one bedroom apartment.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money. And then one just last point on the crypto. Obviously, we see $2 trillion wiped out over the past almost year off the crypto market. What's your long-term thought on crypto?
Well, my long-term thought is, Bitcoin exists and it's not crypto. So distinguishing those two things is, Bitcoin's use case as a, global store of value that can't be depreciated by, central bank money printing is seemingly more important now than ever before when you see record levels of inflation where, the currency supply could be continually debased by more money printing. I think if you look at, history of money and market cycles and where we're at in the long-term debt cycle, I think that's very likely historically to continue. It's pretty much always continued that governments continually print their way out of these, debt cycles. And so that depreciates the currency even further. And so, having a decentralized, non-censorship resistant, like a fixed supply store of value that cannot be debased like Bitcoin is like extremely important in our world today. And I think it's going to continue to appreciate against the US dollar over time. It's going to be volatile as we've never had an asset like this before in history. We've never used, technology to solve the double spend problem where people can store their wealth in a way that can't be debased. And so, it's an inflation hedge, and it's going to, in my opinion, strong conviction that it's going to appreciate against all fiat currencies over time until eventually becomes a global store of value.
I would agree. I think about Bitcoin and I think about Ethereum. I think, what 70 cents, chopped. So it's 30 cents on the dollar from what it was at the peak. And I do agree with the volatility, but I'm also a believer. You buy things and you hold it long term. And I think it is a piece of people's portfolio. It should be.
Yes.
So today, a little under 20 grand a Bitcoin. I believe in that if you're going to hold that long term, especially because pension funds and institutional investors are also invested in that space. So I do agree with that. I want to ask you two quick questions. What's something that comes to your mind that you're deeply grateful for?
I mean, like I said in the beginning, like just the hand I was dealt, and that kind of encapsulates everything. Like I was born, in a great place, like it's just like physical geolocation of where I was born. And that's kind of like, half the world lives on a couple dollars a day. So that's kind of coin flip. Like if you flip a coin and it's heads, you're born in the first world. If it's not, you're born in the third world. That's kind of like the luck of the draw. And so that 50-50 alone, like in poker, we have this concept of coin flips where like you get all your money in with a hand and your opponent has another hand, and the equity is 50-50. So each player has a 50% chance of winning. And this is a very common scenario. It's called a race scenario. So like, for example, 2 queens against ace king is 50-50. And like, you see these hands play out. I've played millions of hands of poker. So I've seen, tens or thousands of these hands, and I lose a lot of them. And like, you just see how easy it is for luck to be distributed in a certain way. And sometimes it's for you, sometimes it's against you. And just thinking about the scope of my life being, a one coin flip. There was only one. There was one time where I was born, and it was born on heads, and like that alone, and like everything that means, I had good parents, and like some people don't have as good of parents as other people, but you still have like, you're still here, you're still like alive, you're doing your thing. Family, people support me, like friends around me. I've been, parents push me to get an education, like just everything, like my health. Richard Branson says, your only problem in your life is your health. Like if that is going well, and I think everyone to some extent in life has had something go wrong with their health at some point. You break a leg, and a healthy person wants 1,000 things. A sick man only wants once. We've all been sick at some point. So like just not being sick, like it's just something to be grateful for. Like I just think about the most trivial things that I can really feel internally, and not just like cerebrally think about it, but actually feel it as an emotion. I do like affirmations, meditation every day. And so like in the morning, I'm always trying to get in that state where I'm like, not just going through the motions of, okay, I'm grateful for my wife, grateful for my house, grateful for my spouse, grateful for this, like kind of like forcing yourself to do it, but you don't feel it. I actually get into that state where I'm like feeling that in my heart emotionally every day. And I think that's like a really great place to be, because then when things happen around you in your life, you're like, you know what, I'm grateful. Like a small thing yesterday. I don't always get this right, so I don't want to toot my own horn, but like yesterday, we went out to a restaurant and left our phone at the restaurant. And so we obviously had to turn around. And like, that's very frustrating because you're kind of losing time, right? Like there's no real way to think about it, right? You're losing time. You have to go halfway home and then back to the restaurant and then back home. There's not much value there in that experience, right? Okay. But I was thinking like, maybe, okay, I'm going to be grateful. Like maybe on the way home, we would have gotten a collision that we didn't get in. And so we avoided this like, there was an energy pocket there and we didn't go into that energy of some kind of negativity and we went into this other place. We got home safely at the end of the night. And I think like maybe I wouldn't have got home safely. And like if I could replay my life at the end of my life and I could see all the different permutations of way things could have played out in the multiverse or whatever, however you want to think about simulation theory or God or whatever, like, maybe there was something bad there that happened and you were close to an encounter that never happened. And you can't even be grateful for it because you don't know what you don't know. But like at the same time, I try and imagine that would have happened. And I'm like, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful I got home safe, even though I went 30 minutes out of my way to go pick up a phone that I could have gotten the first time. But like, maybe I would have gotten a crash, that's just how I see the world. Like,
no, I think that message, I hope it resonates with the listeners and the people. That's what we need more of in this world, recognizing we're not entitled to anything, and anything that we have, we should be grateful for. So I appreciate that. Now I'm going to leave you with this. People always get a little funny with this question, but what is something about you that people don't know?
I mean, the first answer I give, I actually do this in an icebreaker. What I do with my poker trainings, we have these group cohorts, and there's tons of people on a Zoom, and everyone wants to know everyone. So the answer I usually give to this question, which is obviously the first thing that comes to my mind, is and this is kind of how I started poker too. So ties in, but I'll be brief. I was in musical theater in high school. That's something people would probably never know about me. I was in Les Miserables. I was Javert, and I was the narrator in Into the Woods, and so I sang and these sorts of things. And so when I got into poker, I was really drawn to it because everyone that was, a jock and in all these sports, they were like in all the sports games, and I was in musical theater. So I quit football. I didn't make the basketball team, but poker was like that intellectual game where I could win. So I felt like, I could beat the jocks at all their things. And so that's something that people don't know about me, my origin story / like, my background before poker.
Yeah, it's really been super informative, really great.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. How can people follow you on social media, learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Alec Torelli everywhere, AlecTorelli. I have a YouTube where it's called Conscious Poker that talks about how to improve at poker. Maybe you resonated with my sort of vibe today, so that's why it's called Conscious Poker. And then AlecTorelli.com for more information about me. I'm very like active on all social media, like Twitter, especially Instagram, whatever. So DM me, say hi, tell me you found me here, tell me about you. I'm happy to learn about other people, meet people, and help you on your journey if I can in any way.
Thank you so much, Alec. It's really
thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Alec Torelli. Next week, I'll speak with entrepreneur and the CEO of Stone Age Inc., Kerry Siggins, about why it's so important to build an employee-centric culture at your company. If you like the show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at @Popack. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.